Hi everyone, my name is Michelle Knudsen and welcome to First Chapter Friday. I'm really excited to read to you today the first chapter of my new book, Into the Wild Magic, published by Candlewick Press. Chapter 1. The new girl sat alone in the corner of the schoolyard, poking at the ground with a stick. Her long dark hair was pulled into a messy ponytail, and strands of it were coming down to cover her eyes. Bevvy hated when her own hair got in her eyes. She didn't know how the other girl could stand it. Maybe she couldn't stand it. She sure didn't look very happy. Her mouth was pulled down at the edges like someone who was thinking about very unpleasant things. Normally, Bevvy would never have dreamed of going over to talk to her. But the girl was sitting in her corner. There was a giant sugar maple there, just outside the iron schoolyard fence, and its big leaf-laden branches reached over and around in a way that somehow made the grounds beneath seem hidden and safe. Bevvy knew it wasn't safe, not really, but when she sat there during recess, the other kids usually left her alone. She could retreat there into the tree's shade and read her book and not have to listen to anyone say mean things about her or feel sad about being left out. It was like her own little world. Except not today, because that other girl was there. Bevvy stepped forward until she was standing right in front of the new girl. She waited, but the new girl didn't look up. After a minute, Bevvy sat down beside her. "What do you want?" the girl asked, not looking at her. "Nothing," Bevvy said without thinking. Then go away." Bevvy didn't move. She kind of wanted to go away, but she didn't have any place else to go. "Your hair is in your eyes," she said. Now the other girl looked up. Her eyes were green, not brownish green or hazel, but bright emerald green. So doesn't it bother you? I have a bobby pin if you want one." The girl stared at her. Bevvy stared back, nearly mesmerized by those green eyes, even though one of them was still partly covered by long strands of dark hair. It was probably a mistake to have offered this strange girl a bobby pin. She didn't look like she'd ever used a bobby pin in her life. "I like it when my hair covers my eyes," the girl said finally. "You do? Why? I hate it." Bevvy thought about how that sounded. "I mean, I hate when my hair covers my eyes. I don't hate your hair. Your hair is nice. Although your eyes are so pretty. People could see them better if you kept your hair back." The girl was staring again. Bevvy clamped her mouth shut. She was always saying dumb things. That's why the other kids didn't like her. Well, one of the reasons, maybe. "Why are you talking to me?" the girl asked. Bevvy felt her face go hot. "I'm sorry. You're in my corner. This is where I always sit." Bevvy took a breath and added, "But you can stay. I don't mind. I mean, it's not actually my corner, like I own it or something. I mean, I'm sure you knew that. It's not like someone can own a corner. You talk a lot," the girl said. But one corner of her frowny mouth twitched upward when she said it. "I know," Bevvy said. And then, inexplicably, she found herself smiling. "I can't seem to help it." The other corner of the girl's mouth twitched up. She was very nearly smiling back. "What's your name?" Bevvy asked before she could remember to be shy. The girl hesitated, as though she was thinking about whether or not to answer. Then she said, "Cat." "Cat? Like the animal?" The girl, Cat, looked at her sharply, like she was going to be mad. But after studying Bevvy's face for a moment, she just said, "It's short for Catherine, but no one calls me that." "I'm Bevvy. It's short for Beverly. No one calls me that either. Well, except the teachers." "Why don't you tell them you don't like it?" Bevvy paused. This had honestly never occurred to her. "I don't know." Cat poked at the ground with her stick again. "They're not going to call me Catherine," she said fiercely to the dirt. Bevvy suddenly wished she had a stick to poke at the dirt too. It looked very satisfying. They were quiet for a while after that. Bevvy sat and listened to the sugar maple's leaves rustling and watched the play of shadows on the ground as the light filtered through the branches above her. It had stayed unusually warm past the end of September, and the leaves were still green and vibrant. She thought about taking out her book, but she was afraid that might make it seem like she didn't want to talk anymore. She did want to talk. She just couldn't tell if Cat wanted to. She finally decided to take out her book, but not open it. Maybe Kat would ask her about it, and then they'd have something to talk about. It was a collection of fairy tales from the school library. Bevvy loved fairy tales. She also loved fantasy stories and science fiction stories, and really any kind of book that was about someplace other than the regular world. She had to live in the regular world. She certainly didn't want to read books about it. Books were for escaping from this world, escaping and staying away for as long as possible. Kat glanced at the book but didn't say anything. Bevvy considered and discarded about 100 different things she could say to reopen the conversation. It was starting to feel weird sitting there holding her closed book and not talking. She traced a finger along the plastic-covered image on the front, a collage of magical creatures and adventurers and fairies and wizards and castles, all her favorite things. She wondered what kinds of things Kat liked. Finally, she couldn't bear the silence another second. "Did you just move here? Is today your first day? Where did you live before?" Kat sighed, as though these were very difficult questions and she was going to have to think very hard about the answers. She dragged her stick slowly back and forth a few times before saying, "Somewhere else." Bevvy smiled uncertainly. "Well, obviously, but listen," Kat said, at last looking up. I don't make friends. There's no point. I won't be staying long enough for it to matter." Bevvy blinked at her. "What? But why?" "Don't worry about it. It's none of your business anyway." "But what does that matter how long you'll be here? Why can't you make friends for whatever time you'll have?" Bevvy was surprised to find herself almost angry. "I wouldn't turn down a friendship just because it couldn't be forever. I'd be happy to have a friend even if it was just for one day." Her face went hot again, practically burning this time, as she realized she'd just confessed to this stranger that she didn't have any friends. Well, that was probably the end of that then. Once a person knew everyone else thought there was something wrong with you, they tended to think so too. She stuffed her book back into her bag and stood up. "Forget it," she said. "I'll find a different place to sit until you switch schools again or whatever." She walked away, grateful that it was almost time for recess to be over, since she had no idea where else to go. Part of her hoped that Kat would call after her to wait, come back, but of course that didn't happen. Bevvy headed slowly toward the cafeteria doors, careful not to make eye contact with anyone. It was fine, she told herself. It would just be like it was before. No better, but not really any worse. At least Kat hadn't been actively mean to her or anything. But the thought of giving up her tree corner made her achingly sad. It was the only place in the whole school, other than the library, where she felt anything close to good. She got through the rest of the day and climbed onto the school bus, sitting in her usual seat right up front where it was easy for everyone to ignore her. She always tried to ignore them too, but sometimes it was hard. It was hard today. Bevvy knew exchanging a couple of sentences with someone didn't make them your friend. And Kat had made it clear she didn't want friends anyway. But for a few minutes, before Kat had actually said she didn't want to be friends, it had seemed possible. She could hear the other kids behind her, shouting and laughing and talking to each other. Even the quieter ones had someone to talk to, or at least someone they could sit with and not talk to in a comfortable way. Bevvy never had anyone. Not since second grade when Eva moved away. When Eva had been here, it hadn't mattered that none of the other kids ever really took to her. And after, even though she'd missed Eva terribly, she'd thought that of course she'd make other friends eventually. Everyone made friends at some point. But she just didn't. All the other kids already had their friends. When she'd started middle school this year, she thought things would be different, but even the kids who'd come from other elementary schools showed up in groups of existing friendships, and none of them ever seemed to want more. Or at least, they didn't seem to want her. Bevvy had been nice, she'd been friendly, she'd joined clubs, she'd made the effort that her parents kept telling her would bring the other kids around, but none of it ever made a difference. She knew she talked too much once she got started, and she wasn't interested in a lot of the things the other kids were interested in, but she still didn't understand why that meant she was unfriendable. Why there wasn't just one person who thought, "Hey, that Bevvy girl seems nice. I think I'll invite her to come over after school or to my birthday party or just to sit with me and my other nice friends at lunch. And then Damien had transferred into their school during the 4th week of classes, and everything had gotten even worse. The other kids hadn't really been cruel to her before. They just didn't want much to do with her. But Damien wasn't satisfied with just not being her friend. She couldn't explain it. It was like he'd arrived with a personal mission to make her life miserable. On his very first day, he'd swaggered up to her in the hallway and knocked her bag out of her hands and scattered her books all over the floor. Everyone had laughed. Laughed at her overturned book bag, and laughed at the unicorn book she'd been reading, and laughed hardest at her obvious dismay at what had happened. Like she wasn't supposed to be upset. Like being upset at what Damien had done was somehow the worst crime of all. And it was like some kind of signal to all of them, because no one spoke to her from that day onward except to tease or mock or threaten her. She felt tears pricking at her eyes and forced them angrily back. Letting the other kids see her crying on the bus was certainly not going to help anything. She just wished she could understand what was wrong with her, so she could fix it, and then maybe things could change. She just wanted one friend, just one. She didn't think that was so much to ask for. Okay, that's the end of the first chapter. I hope you liked listening to it. I hope that you will read the rest of the book and find out what happens to Bevvy and Kat and all of their friends and their not friends in this story about adventure and magic and dragons and shapeshifters and sorcerers and pretty much all of my favorite things that I like to put in a book. Okay, thanks for listening. Bye.